In this video, I'm going to give an in-depth review of every single BTO project that will be released in June 2026 BTO launch. But I thought before we go into the details, let's talk about the top line first, like which project would be the best for singles, for flippers, and for those who are budget conscious, and I will also share my personal favorite. If you want to know which one is quote-unquote the worst project, then you would need to check out my other videos exclusive for members only. Let's start with the first category, which is best project for singles. In this June 2026 BTO launch, I would say that Bukit Merah actually offers the best project for singles. Why? Because there will be 810 two-room flexi. Of course, about 40% will be allocated for seniors, and also there will be some portion allocated for first-timer families, second-timer families, etc. But first-timer singles is still being allocated 316 units, which is still quite a lot. Other than that, the on-site facilities of this project is also wonderful because it will have an eating house, a supermarket, several restaurants and cafes, and also shops. And it is very close to Teluk Blangah MRT, which is probably about 100 meters or so. Of course, it depends on which block you are residing. So, if you are singles, I would highly recommend to check out the Bukit Merah BTO to check whether it fits your criteria. Next up, let's talk about which project would be the best if you just want to sell your flat immediately after MOP and maximize your profit. Actually, if we see the lineup, there are several towns that most likely you would be able to sell beyond $1 million for a 4-room flat, which is Mo Kio, Bishan, and Bukit Merah. So there are 4 projects that is located in those towns, right? However, the 2 projects in Mo Kio most likely will be categorized as plus projects, and then Bishan and Bukit Merah most likely will be categorized as prime projects. And one of the challenge with plus and prime project is because the future resale buyer is subjected to income ceiling cap. So on a separate video, I've made calculation estimating what is the maximum resale price that is possible considering the income ceiling cap. This is of course assuming that they don't have like rich parent to help top up the payment. So a typical couple would be able to afford up to maybe around $1.4 million, not backed by very rich families. So if you already know that your maximum realistic price would be roughly around $1.4 million later on, then another factor to consider would be the subsidy clawback percentage. Obviously, prime projects will have a higher subsidy clawback versus plus projects. And then we also have to consider how much the flat is being offered by HDB. At this point in time, we don't know how much would it be. And obviously, we also need to consider the facilities and also the proximity to MRT station, etc. So with everything considered, I would say that Bishan most probably would be a good option for flippers out there. If the 2 projects at Mo Kio much closer to MRT station, I would say Mo Kio. But given the location, I think Bishan would probably stand a better chance in maximizing your profit. You might ask, well, why not Bukit Merah? While I do agree that if you manage to secure a flat that is facing the ocean with unblocked view, it could be very lucrative. But having said that, again remember that for plus and prime projects, there is an income ceiling cap for future resale buyers, which means that no matter how fancy your flat is, of course you can list down your flat for $2 million later on. But the question would be, is there any buyers who would be able to pay that amount of money? And I think Bishan BTO would be offered by HDB at a slightly lower price versus the Bukit Merah BTO. That would be my guess. A dark horse if you want to maximize your profit is probably Sembawang. Why? Because the 2 projects at Sembawang will be categorized as standard, which means that there is no income ceiling cap for future resale buyer. There's no restriction to rent out the whole flat after MOP, etc. And with the Sembawang shipyard transformation, if that plan actually pushes through, most likely there will be like new MRT station around there, and then there will be more facilities and establishments. So it might help to increase the value of flats surrounding the area. Okay, now let's talk about which project is the best if you are on a budget. Although the official price hasn't been released so far, but based on historical prices, I would guess the most affordable option would be Sembawang and also Woodlands. But between these two, I am assuming that Sembawang will be cheaper versus Woodlands. Actually, if we look at the location, these three projects, one in Woodlands and then two in Sembawang, are all not within walking distance to any MRT station, so they are all further away. However, I would say that Sembawang has an edge here because it is going to be cheaper versus Woodlands. And then there's this Sembawang transformation plan, which if pushed through, it would help to boost the resale value in the future. So I would say that if you're on a budget, then you can apply to Sembawang town if you like the area and you are ready to apply for a BTO. Now let's talk about which one is my personal favorite. So for this section, there's no right or wrong. This is like purely subjective. I would say if I want to apply for a two-room flexi as a single or senior, I would just go for Bukit Merah simply because the chances are the best there because there are plenty of two-room flexi in this development, and also it's quite nearby the Teluk Blangah MRT station with a lot of on-site facilities in the development. And if I am on the market to apply for 3-room, I would have applied for Bukit Merah as well. Why? Because I personally believe that 3-room would be the future hot commodity. Maybe not right now. People, I think, right now still more focusing on 4-room flat if they have a family. But if price keeps increasing and then people's buying power is not significantly increased, then a budget that might be able to buy a 4-room flat in the past, in the future, you might be able to only buy a 3-room flat with the same amount of budget. And 3-room right now for a plus or prime project is actually in a sweet spot, meaning you have less competition because most people are wary about the 10 years MOP if it's for a 3-room flat. So in summary, if I'm gunning for a 3-room, I would have gone for Bukit Merah. Now, what if I want a 4-room flat? If I am on the market for a 4-room flat BTO, I would have applied for Bishan, I think. That's just a personal choice. Why? Because Bishan is relatively close to Marymount MRT station, so it's about 550 meters. And it's quite a close commute to the CBD area for those working there. And I'm just assuming that the competition for Bishan is probably slightly lower versus Bukit Merah. I mean, at the end of the day, there's no right or wrong, right? I just personally think I would have applied for Bishan instead of Bukit Merah if I am targeting a 4-room flat. Now, what if I want a bigger flat, let's say 5-room or 3-gen? If we look at the lineup, there are only 3 projects that is offering 5-room, Woodlands and the 2 projects at Sembawang. And then for 3-gen, there is even only 1 project at Sembawang Drive who is offering 3-gen flats. Well, if my budget is not so limited, I think if I want a bigger flat, I would have aimed for maybe 3-gen at Sembawang Drive because based on historical data, it seems that the amount of applicants for 3-gen is actually on the lower end. So I'll have less competition. And then with Sembawang, I would be hoping that the Sembawang shipyard transformation plan actually pushes through. So yeah, I would have applied for a 3-gen at Sembawang if I really wanted a bigger flat. Granted that the location is quite far from any MRT station. However, with the Sembawang shipyard transformation, I would hope that there will be a new MRT station eventually. Now, if you want to know my opinion about quote-unquote worst category for this June 2026 BTO launch, please check my other video because I am discussing it on a separate video exclusive for members only. And with that, let's discuss the deep dive details on each project. Now, let's talk about the Bukit Merah BTO. We will discuss the location, the classification, and what are my brutal honest take on the pros and cons of this location. If you feel that the location looks familiar, this is because the location of this project is opposite the previous Berlayar Residences BTO that was launched back in 2025. Now, this project is very huge. It's close to 2,000 units. It will have 810 two-room flexi, 170 units of 3-room, and 980 units of 4-room. Not only that, in terms of the on-site facilities, it will have an eating house, a supermarket, couple of restaurants and cafes, shops, preschool as well as residence network center. In terms of distance to MRT station, as you can see on the map, Teluk Blangah is just right behind this development. So I'm guessing it's like 100 meters or so. Of course, it will depend on which block you stayed lah, but at least it's very, very near. In terms of the classification, because Berlayar Residences was tagged as prime, I think this project will also hit with prime classification. Back then, Berlayar Residences had 14% subsidy clawback rate. Now for this one, probably it will be the same or even higher because it's being launched later. But given the application rate for Berlayar Residences was quite high, I'm assuming the demand for this plot will be more or less the same or even more. Okay, now let's talk about the location. So this is the map that HDB gave. If I look at the Google map, basically this is the corresponding land plot. As you can see, this is right opposite the previous Berlayar Residences that was launched in 2025. And as you can see, it is definitely within walking distance to the Teluk Blangah MRT station, so that's very good. One thing to note is that at the back of the plot, as you can see, there's a highway here. So if let's say you don't get a good queue number, you might face the highway. So that is something to take note of. Now, the development itself comes with great on-site facilities because it will have supermarket and eating house, etc. Right? So that's good. If you want more amenities, of course, you can simply take the train and go to Harbourfront area where there are more amenities here. Or if you like active lifestyle, as you can see, quite a lot of option from Bukit Cermin Boardwalk, or you can go to Labrador Nature Reserve, or you can go to Mount Faber, or you can even go to Sentosa, for example, if you want to enjoy your time with your family. So I think definitely this location is good to have work-life balance because the distance to CBD area is also quite close. Now there are also like some small shops and like eateries underneath the development that you see surrounding the area. So that can be also an option if you want more amenities. However, if you look at the map, if you have young children, the reality is that this location doesn't have much schooling option. So you can see Blangah Rise Primary School is over here. But then other than that, the option is very limited, right? You have Radin Mas Primary School, but it's a bit far. You have CHIJ St. Teresa's Convent, but it's quite far. So I think that would be the trade-off if you want to live in this location. But of course, nowadays the problem can be easily solved by school bus, right? So that would solve the distance problem. Now let's zoom out and see what are your chances in getting ocean view. So the land plot is at the back, right? And then as you can see, actually there are land plots that is closer to the water. So there's always a possibility that even though you have a middle or high floor, some new development will be developed there, and then you ended up just looking at another tower instead of the ocean. So that would be the watch out. But if let's say you're lucky enough and then your view doesn't get blocked, indeed, like towards the southern area, you would be able to see some ocean view. But if not, even this side would be good because you would be looking at the greeneries of Mount Faber, which I think will be nice as well. So you would be able to see like city view on this side. So I think overall it's still a strong option if you want to apply for a BTO in this June 2026 launch. Now let's talk about the pros and cons, starting with what I like first. So I think this location definitely would have extremely high resale value, especially if you manage to snatch one of the high floors. If let's say you have unit facing the ocean, definitely that would be a bonus for many people. However, having said that, looking at the map, this project is not the closest to the water though. So even if let's say at the beginning you can see the ocean, I don't know whether it will be there for long because there's always a possibility of your view getting blocked by future development. So take that with a grain of salt. And then another thing that I like is I think this development on its own already have the premium image because it is HDB, but it has a lot of on-site facilities which makes it very convenient if you live here. And I'm sure it will also help with the resale value later on. Another thing that I like is that this project have almost 2,000 flats. So when it's time for you to sell your flat, let's say after MOP you want to sell, there will be a lot of price benchmark for resale, and typically a lot of benchmark will mean that it's easier to fetch even a higher price. And then another good thing with the number of flats, because there are so many flats, hopefully the application rate will be more manageable because the supply hopefully will be able to keep up with the demand. Another thing that I like is that because it is very near to the Teluk Blangah MRT station, it will be easy to commute to work if you are working in the CBD area, or if you want to get more amenities, let's say in the harborfront area, it will be very convenient. If let's say you want to rent out some of the rooms here, it should be easy as well. I think the demand will be quite high, but remember, because this will be a prime flat, you will not be able to rent out the whole flat even after MOP, so please take note of that. And then if you like active lifestyle, this location is near the Bukit Cermin boardwalk, so you can jog near the ocean in theory. And then another thing that I like is that this project have plenty of two-room flexi as well as four-room. Particularly for two-room flexi, 810 is a lot. Now, on the other hand, what are the things that I don't really like about this development? I think first and foremost, if we look at the map, this project is next to a highway, so certain blocks, especially if you can only get low to middle floor, it will be noisy and dusty. So again, it will boils down to your queue number later on. Another thing that I read from online forums is there's actually a trade-off if your development has an eating house, supermarket, cafes, etc. downstairs. It's good for your convenience, but for those who are living on the lower floor, actually it's a double edge because it will be noisier for you, and then there will be also like more cockroaches and bugs, specifically because of the eating house and the supermarket downstairs. But of course, this is only applicable for certain blocks. Not every block will have this problem. I think another downside would be for family with young children. Please take note that this location doesn't have much school options. And I don't think this will be resolved anytime soon. So you have to bear in mind that if you have school-going children, they would just have to take school bus, which is additional cost, right? Another thing to consider is I think this project will have quite a high entry price. I'm assuming that the price will be similar to Berlayar residences or even slightly higher. Another thing that the subsidy clawbacks will be maybe 14% or even higher. The restrictions that comes with prime development, of course, I think most people would be familiar with it. The 10-year MOP, cannot rent out the whole flat even after MOP, the income ceiling for future resale buyers, etc. Another downside that you need to consider is that the ocean view might eventually be blocked by other development that will be closer to the water. So that is something to think about. Another thing that you need to watch out for is that the area for this ex-keppel ground is still under development, right? If you see the map, so Berlayar residences will be there, and then this project is there, but then the rest of the land plot are still not announced yet, but it will be developed soon. So which means that you can expect some construction dust and noise from the surrounding areas for several years to come. That is almost certain. So in summary, I think considering all factors, this is still a very solid option if you want to apply for a BTO, because if you look at it from different angles, it does have a lot of good selling points. So for example, it's very near to MRT station, the on-site facilities are great, and the potential resale value is very strong, etc. So overall, this is a very good option. But for families, I think the lack of nearby school options is going to be a real challenge. Another thing to note is that even though this development is relatively near to the ocean, please do not hope so much for ocean view even for high floors, because again, if we look at the map, this land plot is not the closest development to the water, so the ocean view might eventually get blocked. What I'm trying to say is that I think at the end of the day, you need to really stay true to your budget. So don't overextend yourself just to get the highest floor, because it might not get the ocean view that you wanted. So just buy within your budget, what you're comfortable with. And then another thing is for seniors and singles in particular, this project comes with 810 two-room flexi, which is a lot. Just to give you perspective, the project at Mo Kio Avenue 1 only has 570 units combined for all flat types. Sembawang North Oaks has 870 units combined for all flat types from two-room flexi to 5-room. So the fact that HDB allocated 810 units just for two-room flexi alone in this Bukit Merah BTO is a massive attempt to boost the two-room flexi supply. So for singles and seniors, please make sure that you do consider this project very carefully. If you want to apply, I think this would be one of your bigger chance to secure a flat lah, especially in a mature town and close to MRT station. Now let's discuss Bishan BTO. This project will have 1,210 units of 2-room flexi and 4-room flat, so definitely a very exciting mega project, especially in Bishan town. Regarding the on-site facilities, this project will have an eating house, a mini mart, several shops, a preschool, and a residence network. In terms of distance to MRT station, according to Google Map, this project is about 550 meters away from Marymount, and from the look of it, indeed, it looks quite near. Alternatively, you can also take a longer walk or ride a bus to the Upper Thompson MRT station. But that one is a little bit further away lah, so I think Marymount would be your go-to MRT station. In terms of classification, I think that this project will be a prime. Why? Well, because as you can see in terms of the flat type, it doesn't have a 5-room, which is usually a telltale sign of a project will be assigned as a plus or prime. But for this particular project, I'm leaning towards that it will be a prime instead of a plus, because the government already give some hints about this project even before this Bishan BTO is officially launched as part of the Jun BTO lineup. So typically, if it's being commercialized in advance, that means that it's like a jewel project. So I'm guessing this project will be classified as prime flat. Now let's talk about the location. So this is the map that HDB gave. As you can see, it is quite near the Marymount MRT station. And if we look at the Google map, I believe that this is the land plot that HDB was talking about. And as you can see, it's a very, very huge land plot. No wonder it can fit more than 1,200 flats. Now, if we zoom out, as you can see, actually, the Makrichi is over here. So initially, I thought, oh, this will be such a nice greenery view. And also, you can see the waterfront over here. That'll be nice. But unfortunately, upon closer look, that's actually won't be the case because of this building, you see. There's this residential block, which is called Lakeview Estate. So according to the internet, that building is a condo which was privatized from HUDC back in 2003, but that building itself was completed back in 1977. So it's a long time ago. So it's kind of old. Now, some people say that it's about 34-story high. So unfortunately, your view will be blocked by this, maybe except this part. So this part seems like a parking lot or something. So maybe if you are lucky enough to get a block that is facing this car park, then you will be able to get a glimpse of the Makrichi reservoir, which will be great. Now, there's also a buzz that this Lakeview Estate will eventually be unblocked. If it's the case, then unfortunately, even though the building will be torn down, but then a new building will be developed, right? There's a possibility it will be even taller. which means that your view will still be blocked. So please take note that if you apply for this project, you can't really expect like unblocked greener view of the Makrichi Reservoir. Now on this side, these are like low-rise buildings, so you may be able to get unblocked view if you face this way. And then on this part, this is like older HDB, which means that it's a bit tall as well. So this side is kind of blocked as well, even though as you can see, there's this strip of empty land plot over here. On the map, this land plot looks a bit small, but I think that it will be developed into something in the future. Now, in terms of amenities, actually, along the Upper Thompson Road, there are a lot of eateries and small shops around here. So you will have some good choices within walking distance. And of course, obviously, Sin Ming Plaza is over here, Thompson Plaza is over here, and of course, Bishan is just right over here. It's very close to go to Bishan. You can either take the MRT or take the bus, so that would be great. Now let's talk about school option. So if we look at this map, as you can see, there are few school option, but then it's kind of limited. As you can see, you have Whitley Secondary School, Catholic High School, Raffles Institution, but then I guess most people would focus on this one, Aitong School. So according to Google Map, it will be within the 2-kilometer radius. So, if you're interested to put your kids here, then this is good to know. Even if you don't have any school-going children, usually in Singapore, if your house is near top schools, it will also help to boost the resale value later down the road. So now let's talk about the pros and cons. So what do I like about this project? So I love the fact that this location, you can just walk to Marymount MRT station. So it's easy for you to go anywhere in Singapore. And then I also like that this is a mega project with more than 1,200 flats, which is kind of rare nowadays, especially if you're talking about mature town. We did have several mega projects in mature town, but most of them are like far away from MRT station. So the fact that this project is a mega project and it's near MRT station is very special. Another good thing, if you have a lot of neighbors within the same development, that will actually be good for resale benchmark later on. So it'll be kind of easier to get a higher price when you're trying to sell your flat after MOP. And then I also appreciate that the on-site facilities are quite good, because you will have an eating house, a mini mart, several shops, preschool, and also residence network center. Unfortunately, there's no supermarket in the on-site facilities, but then given the location of this project, it will be easy for you to shop anyway. Speaking about amenities, as mentioned before, this location is quite near to the Thompson Plaza, Sin Ming Plaza, and along the Upper Thompson Road, there are a lot of eateries and small shops as well. And of course, you can always take an MRT or bus to Bishan MRT station, because that side will have even more amenities. In terms of school options, this project is within 2-kilometer radius to Aitong School, but of course you need to consider as well like which block are you staying in. And then another good thing about this project is because there is only one project being launched in Bishan town for June, then you don't have to worry about the lottery effect, or whether you need to pick between two projects depending on your queue number, etc. So you don't have that problem here in Bishan town for this June 2026 launch. And I think in terms of the resale value, this project will hold its value well. And I think you should not have any problem trying to rent out rooms as well, because of the location, and also the competitor nearby seems to be like older development. So I think if you are lucky enough to get a flat in this BTO, it should be very easy for you to sell later down the road, or even rent out rooms if you want to do so. Now, on the other hand, what are the things that I think you need to watch out for? For me, the biggest letdown, unfortunately, is actually the view most likely will be blocked by an older development, which is Lakeview Estate, which is closer to the greeneries, as you can see on the map. This development is an older condo which is ex-HUDC, completed in 1977. According to Google, it's about 34 stories high. So unfortunately, most likely your view will be blocked by this development. Otherwise, you would have like a nice unblocked view, but unfortunately that's not the case. Another watch out is because this project will have an eating house, a mini mart, and several shops, etc. Watch out that for lower floors in certain block, you might get more noise pollution or even risk of cockroaches and bugs and rodents because of these eating house and shops. That might be a risk for you. Another thing that I don't really like about this project is that the subsidy clawback will be on the higher side, and of course because this project will be a prime project, there are quite a lot of strict restrictions that comes with this development. I'm sure you are familiar with it by now, such as the 10-year MOP, subsidy clawback, you cannot rent out the whole flat even after MOP, your future resale buyers is subjected to income ceiling, etc. Another watch out is the potential construction noises around the area, because as you can see, the land plot across it is still empty. So I'm guessing that it will be developed into something else in the future. And then even there are some buzz that the Lakeview estate itself will one day be unblocked and then be developed into something else. If that's the case, then there might be some construction noise around the area. Another thing is, objectively, there aren't that many school options that is nearby this development, even though Aitong looks like going to be within 2-kilometer radius from this development. But then other than that, if you look at the map objectively, there aren't that many school options nearby. Another downside, I'm guessing that this Bishan BTO project will be one of the darling in the June 2026 BTO launch, so expect the competition to be quite high. So what's the summary? I think the fact that the government socialized this land plot on the media even before the official announcement, that means that they are confident that this project will please a lot of people, and I think it does. It's quite rare nowadays to have a mega BTO project that is near MRT station and located in a mature town. Even though there are other projects near the plot with standard classification, as you can see, even closer to the Marymount MRT station, there are older HDB buildings, but then they are much older. I think they are launched like in the 70s or in the 80s, so it's not really your direct competition when you want to sell your flat later on after MOP. However, if you were hoping to get unblocked view towards the Makrichi Reservoir or the Lower Pierce Reservoir, unfortunately, I don't think you will get it in general because the old development next door, Lakeview Estate, going to block most of the view because it is 34 stories high, and from the map of it, your view will be blocked by it unless you are lucky enough to face the car park of the Lakeview Estate, which means that you can get some pockets of unblocked view, but then overall it will still be blocked. And then for young families, please note that the number of school option is actually kind of limited. If your kid is not going to Aitong, then where would they go? Of course, that problem can be easily solved with school bus, but then I just want to make sure that you realize that the school option is indeed limited. But overall, I believe that this project is still a very solid choice. Highly recommended if you want to live in the Bishan area. But what do you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Okay, now let's move on to the project at Mo Kio Avenue 1. Now this project is kind of small because it only has 480 units of 3-room and 4-room flats. But then in terms of the on-site facilities, it's actually quite stunning because they will have an eating house, a mini mart, several shops, preschool, and also residence network center. Another notable thing about this project is apparently the construction has begun in September 2025, and this project is scheduled to be completed in 2030. So meaning that this project is part of the shorter waiting time program, which will be good if you want to get your keys as soon as possible. Now, in terms of classification, my guess is that this project will be a plus. Why? Because it's located in a mature town, but then it's a little bit further away from MRT station. Now, speaking about MRT station, the nearest MRT station is Mayflower, and according to Google Map, it's about 850 meters away. However, some audience commented on my channel is that if you take the shortcut, actually it should not be that far. The person said probably it's about maybe 5 to 8 minutes walking. I don't know for sure, but looking at the map, yeah, probably if you take the shortcut, it will be much faster to the Mayflower MRT station. Now let's talk about the location. Okay, so this is the map that HDB gave. As you can see, this is the land plot next to the panorama condo. So if we look at Google Map, I believe that this is the land plot. And as you can see, it is within walking distance, I guess, to Mayflower Market and Food Center. If you just bypass this HDB block, MRT is over here. So probably, yeah, if you cut through the road here from these HDB blocks, then you will be able to get to the Mayflower MRT station even sooner. Now, this land plot is also quite close to the CHIJ St. Nicholas Girls School, which I believe will be a good selling point if you have young children and you want to put them here, or if let's say you want to sell your flat after MOP, this will be a good selling point. Now, if we look at the land plot, so this part is facing high-rise residential building, right? This part also, but this part is facing low-rise building. So I'm guessing that if you manage to get a medium or high floor, you will be able to get unblocked view. Assuming that you manage to get a block that is facing this Thompson Hill area. This part is a condo, so your view will be blocked. Yeah, so it seems that your best bet to get unblocked view is only if you face this Thompson Hill area. Now, in terms of potential resale value later down the road, if we look at the map, the nearest HDB to the land plot are kind of old. So according to Google, as you can see here, the lease year started in like 1980s. So definitely it will not be your direct competitor if you want to sell your unit later on, because even though these are only standard flats, but then again, they are kind of old, right? Which means that even though these surrounding HDB are only subjected to 5-year MOP and standard restrictions, but then again, because of their age, they are not really your direct competition when you want to sell your BTO later after MOP. Now, in terms of school options, as you can see on the map, there are several primary and secondary schools nearby. So that's a good use for families with young children. For example, you have the Mayflower Primary School over here, and then you also have another primary school here, Mo Kio Primary School, and even actually Aitong is here, but it's a little bit further away. If you want to be nearer to Aitong School, then you can opt for the other Mo Kio BTO that is nearer to Amo residence. It is also being launched in June 2026. Now, I have discussed that project in a separate video, so if you are interested to know more about that project, please check out my other video also in this channel. Now, let's talk about what are the pros and cons of this location. What I like about this spot is that it seems to be within walking distance to MRT station, especially if you just bypass the next door HDB blocks. And then I also appreciate that this project will be part of the shorter waiting time program. As mentioned by HDB in their press release, apparently they already started construction in September 2025, and this particular BTO is scheduled to be completed in the first quarter of 2030. So that's quite near. And then I also appreciate that it is near top school, which is the CHIJ St. Nicholas Girls School, which means means that it will help families with young children, but also it is good for your future resale value if you want to sell your flat later on. And then because this project is located in Mo Kio town, which is a mature town, you can be rest assured that this project will have a strong resale value later on, especially when you look at the map. The neighboring HDBs are kind of old, like launched in the 80s or something like that. So even though this project will be subjected to the 10-year MOP and other strict restrictions such as income ceiling for future buyer, etc., but then again, because your competitors are kind of old buildings, you will still be able to get good amount when you sell your flat later on. That's what I am predicting. I also appreciate that this project, even though it's kind of small, only 480 units, but it has a lot of on-site facilities, including an eating house, a mini mart, several shops, preschool, and also residence network center. I also appreciate that this project is within walking distance to some amenities such as Mayflower Market and Food Centers, Shengshong Supermarket, can also walk to McDonald's. There are also several other restaurants and shops nearby. Of course, if you want more amenities, you can simply take the MRT or take bus ride to other parts of Singapore. Another upside about this project is that there is one side that is facing landed housing estate. So at least certain blocks will be able to get unblocked view for medium up to high level floors. Now, on the other hand, what don't I like about this project? Well, the fact is, this is the smallest project in the batch. If you compare with other project being launched in this June 2026, this means that you will have stiff competition and then you will also have less price benchmark when you want to sell your flat later on. Another downside is that this particular project does not have any turun flexi, which is not a good news for seniors and singles. If you still want to apply for Mo Kio Town and you want a turun flexi, it is doable, but then it will be accommodated by the other Mo Kio project, which is located in Mo Kio Avenue 1. But for this particular site in Kebun Baru, this one don't have any turun flexi. Another downside, I am predicting that this project will have high entry price because it is subjected to plus restrictions, meaning that it doesn't get subsidy as much as if it is a prime project. And then another watch out is that for low floors on certain blocks, you might encounter noise and pest problems because there will be an eating house, mini mart, and several shops on site. So be very careful when you want to choose your unit later on. Of course, another downside is that this project comes with strict restrictions, but I think that comes to no surprise for people who are applying for BTO nowadays. Another watch out is that because there are two projects that is being offered in Mo Kio for this June 2026 launch, you have a ballot risk because it will depend on your queue number. The way that it works is that you will be called to the HDB office, right, depending on your queue number. And then which project you can pick will depend on what's still available during your appointment. So this project in Mo Kio Avenue 2 is slightly closer to the MRT station, so probably this will be more popular versus the other one. But to be honest, I think both Mo Kio projects are kinda still neck and neck in terms of their pros and cons. So I wouldn't worry too much because whether you get this plot or the other plot, it's still a solid choice either way. So let's do a recap. In summary, I believe that overall, this is still a very solid option if you want to live in a mature town and still relatively within walking distance to MRT station. Based on how the government already mentioned this project in the media in the early 2026, even before it was officially announced, this indicates that even the government think that this project will be the crowd's favorite. This project does tick a lot of boxes in terms of distance to MRT station, school options, it is located in a mature town, strong resale potential, etc. So I think this is indeed a good option. However, please take note that there's only 470 units in this development. It's not much, and even the other Ang Mo Kio project is also not that much, which means that you can expect the application rate for Ang Mo Kio town in this upcoming June 2026 will be quite high, so the competition will be a bit fierce. The resale value for this project, I think, will be better versus the other Ang Mo Kio project, simply because the surrounding of this Kebun Baru site is surrounded by older HDB, so they will not be your direct competitor. Now let's discuss about the project at Ang Mo Kio Avenue 2. So this project will have a set of 2-room flexi and 4-room. To be exact, it's going to be 370 units of 2-room flexi and 200 units of 4-room flats. In terms of the on-site facility, this location will also come with a preschool. According to the Google map, the nearest MRT station is Mayflower and it's about 1 kilometer away. But comment down below if, let's say, you know how to get to the MRT station faster. And then regarding classification, I'm guessing that this project will get a plus classification simply because it's in Ang Mo Kio area, but it's a little bit further away from the MRT station. Now let's talk about the location. So this is the map that HDB gave, and the land plot is here, which is near the Amo Residence condo. If we look at the map, as you can see, the location is in between Mayflower MRT station and Bright Hill MRT station. So according to Google Map, seems like this is slightly closer to Mayflower MRT station, but it's still about 1 kilometer away. So realistically, for day-to-day living, most probably you would need to take a feeder bus to the nearest MRT station. Now, if I look at the Google Map, it seems that this is the corresponding site, which is the land plot over here. Now, it is quite near to the Bishan Ang Mo Kio Park, which I think is very good if you like active lifestyle. And if I zoom out, it is also relatively close to the Lower Pierce Reservoir Park. In terms of amenities, as you can see, a couple of blocks away, there's a Sheng supermarket over here and then some eateries. And then if you want more option, the Kebun Baru Market and Food Center is over here, as well as an active SG gym. It's also over here. So it seems that there are some amenities within the walking distance if you opted for this location. However, there is a very big watch out about this location in Ang Mo Kio Avenue 1, because if you see a land plot over here, this is actually another BTO that is relatively young. So this is Kebun Baru Edge, which was part of the 2020 BTO launch, and the key collection is in 2025. So it's very new. So I'm currently showing you the Kebun Baru Edge map itself. As you can see, it is literally like within walking distance from this upcoming location for June 2026. So this Kebun Baru Edge was launched before the new HDB classification, which means that it only has a 5-year MOP and the standard classification. And because the age is also very young, I think, like it or not, it will have an impact to your resale value down the road, because you are essentially having a competition with less strict rules and quite young as well. Now let's go back to the HDB map regarding this June 2026 BTO launch, and let's talk about school option. So as you can see, Mayflower Secondary School is nearby, and then there's also Ang Mo Kio Primary School relatively near, Pierce Secondary School. And then a lot of people are excited because Aitong School is over here. If you are keen to have a location that has strong selection of schooling options, then probably this BTO would be a top contender for you. Other than that, the CHIJ St. Nicholas Girls Primary and Secondary School is also over here. But I think the CHIJ is actually closer to the other Ang Mo Kio site at Kebun Baru X school ground site. So the other location in Ang Mo Kio is around here, and then the project that we're talking about is around here. So it's not exactly side by side, but indeed it's still along the road of Ang Mo Kio Avenue 2. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of this location. I think the first thing that grabs my attention is the fact that this spot will be near some top schools such as Aitong and then Pierce Secondary School, etc. So I think that would be good for young families as well as good for your resale value later on. Another thing that I appreciate is that there are some amenities nearby like Kebun Baru Market and Food Center, Melbourne Seafood, etc. And you are also a bus ride away to more amenities. I think regarding the location, even though it's slightly far away from MRT station, I think this will still holds value in terms of resale later on. Another thing that I like is that the fact that this spot is near the Bishan Mo Kio Park and also Lower Pierce Reservoir. Now, on the other hand, what are the things that you need to watch out about this location? I think the biggest red flag for me is the fact that the BTO next door is very young and Kebun Baru Edge TOP in 2025 and it was launched in August 2020 before any of this plus classification. So that BTO literally only have standard classification, and any future resale buyers would of course also consider that as an option if they are looking to buy a resale flat around the same area. So that will be your competition in the future. Another watch out is that according to the map, it is a bit far from MRT station, which is about 1 kilometer away according to Google Map. But having said that, I think you can easily just take bus to nearest MRT station if it's too far to walk. So it's not a deal breaker because again, this is Ang Mo Kio area. Another watch out is that this project is actually relatively small in terms of scale because there will only be 570 units available. Small projects means that you will have less price benchmark in the future, which means that it's going to be a bit more challenging to ask for higher prices. Another downside is that because of the limited amount of units, you might have very stiff competition. I am anticipating the application rate for Ang Mo Kio to be very high in the upcoming June 2026. So just be prepared with that. On-site facilities is also kinda bare because there will only be a preschool, but then that's it. And then I am expecting the entry price to be a little bit on the higher side because this is Ang Mo Kio area. It will come as a plus or maybe a prime classification. So I think that will gives you more subsidies to make the price more affordable. And then, of course, another cons would be this project will have strict restrictions, definitely 10-year MOP. The question right now is only about how many percent will the subsidy clawback be. But those are the cons that I can think of right now. Let me know in the comment section down below if you think there are more pros or cons that I need to mention in this video. Now, let's talk about the verdict. So I think personally, this project has a very special place in my heart because I love to run in the morning. And the fact that this project is so close to the Bishan Ang Mo Kio Park is a big plus, at least for someone like me. However, even putting aside the part that it's near a park, objectively, this Ang Mo Kio project is slightly not as good as the other Ang Mo Kio project. The reason why I'm saying that is because, again, this project has a neighbor that is young, Kebun Baru Edge, and it only has 5 years MOP. So if let's say I'm applying for Ang Mo Kio town and then somehow there's a miracle, I get a good queue number and then both projects are available, this one and the one that was sitting on the former Kebun Baru school ground, I think I would prefer the other one because I think the other one is also slightly closer to the MRT station. So, but that's just me. But if you don't really focus so much on the potential resale value down the line, then actually you can just pick, whichever is available and whichever suits your family's needs. So overall, this location is actually a strong option if you like the Ang Mo Kio area. Just the watch out is that neighbor is so young. So it will definitely impact your resale value. I think that's it. But other than that, this is a good option. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Next up, let's discuss about the project at Woodlands. So this project has 640 units, but then the flat mix is very good because it will have 2-room flexi, 3-room, 4-room, and also 5-room flat. In terms of the on-site facility, this project has a preschool, but then that's it. In terms of distance to MRT station, so if you look at the map, this project is basically in between Marsiling and also Woodlands. So according to Google Map, it is about 1.3 kilometers away from Marsiling and about 1.6 kilometers away from Woodlands. However, having said that, if you don't mind the distance to MRT station, you can simply just wait for the feeder bus. In terms of the project classification, because this project has a 5-room being offered and also 3-room, I am guessing that this will be launched as a standard project, which will be very exciting if you want a house in Woodlands that doesn't have a lot of restrictions. Now, let's talk about the location. So this is the map that HDB gave, and based on some other condo that they stated here, I think this is basically the land plot that they are talking about. This part, if we look at the HDB map again, it will be an upcoming proposed health medical center, proposed church, and also proposed park. So as you can see, this land plot is indeed a little bit far away from MRT station because Marsiling is over here, and then as you can see, Woodlands is over here. But then having said that, of course, you can always take a bus or ride a bicycle or something. Now, in terms of the surrounding, I just want to point out that indeed there is an expressway right behind the land plot. So if let's say you want to pick your unit later on, you would want to consider that there is an expressway over here. But having said that, beyond the expressway, as you can see, there's this vast greeneries, which means that if you are lucky enough to get a high floor, then you would have this very beautiful unblocked view towards the greeneries, which I think will be very serene and very soothing. Now, in terms of amenities, as you can see, the Woodgrove Mall is actually within walking distance. It's just over here. And then you also have other malls such as the Vista Point is over here. And then, of course, Causeway Point is just right over here. If we switch back again to the HDB map, as you can see, there are quite a lot of schools nearby. This will be very helpful, especially if you have young children. So quite a lot of primary school. And then also Singapore American School is over here. The reason why I'm pointing this out is because if indeed this project is only classified as a standard BTO, that means that after 5-year MOP, you will be able to rent out the whole flat after MOP. And if let's say you renovate your unit very nicely, you can even market it to some expats, because the reality is not all expats have big budget. Like some of them actually comes to Singapore under local package, or they have limited, financials. In terms of health facilities, I just want to point out that apparently the area actually going to have quite a lot of health and medical care facilities. So for example, there's a polyclinic here, which I know is further away, but then there will be also like another proposed health and medical care right over here, which is nearer. But then if you look at the map, the Woodlands Hospital is over here as well. So it's a short bus ride away, which is going to be good for you to live here in the long run. Now, if you are wondering where can you go for your day-to-day grocery shopping, so this is the land plot. And as you can see, there's a fair price here in the Woodgrove shopping mall. And of course, there are some eateries inside the mall as well. Now, I want to also point it out that next to the land plot of this BTO, Woodgrove Edge BTO is currently under construction and it is scheduled to be completed in 2027, but it is a mega project. So it has 1,127 flats, which is quite a lot. But then this will be good for your future resale benchmark price later on, because the location is just next to it, right? Meaning that when you want to sell your flat later on, then the prices from Woodgrove Edge will also help you so that you can fetch higher price for your flat later on, assuming that you want to sell your flat sometimes in the future. Another thing that I want to point out, so this is the land plot, right, for this BTO. But then if you see right across it, seems like the building opposite it is like low-rise building, which means that hopefully if you can get high floor or medium floor, you will be able to get a good unblocked view even though you don't face the greeneries. So now let's talk about the pros and cons. What do I like about this project? Well, I think it has a strong resale potential, especially because it's located, nearer to Marsiling and Woodlands MRT station somewhat, instead of in Woodlands North. And then a lot of people also like Woodlands area itself. So I believe that the demand will continue to be strong. And then I also like that there are quite a lot of amenities nearby. So for example, the Woods Grove shopping mall is within walking distance. And then the HDB BTO next door, which is Woods Grove BTO, has more amenities, so you can just use that. For example, they have an eating house, mini mart, several shops, etc. And then if you need healthcare facilities, there's an upcoming polyclinic next door according to HDB master plan, as well as Woodlands Hospital nearby. You can just take a bus. There's another polyclinic as well. Again, can simply take a bus. And then, of course, obviously, if you stay in Woodlands, you are relatively close to JB if you want to do affordable shopping. I also like that this project has wide selection of flat types from 2-room flexi up to 5-room flats. Another thing to appreciate about this project is that it comes with standard restrictions, so just the typical 5-year MOP. You can rent out the whole flat even after MOP, etc. Another thing that I appreciate is that there are quite a lot of schools nearby, so it will be very helpful if you have young kids. Another thing that I appreciate is that if we look at the map, there's this one side that will face a lot of greeneries, even though it will also face the expressway. But then if you get the top floors, then I think you can focus more on the greeneries and not so much being bothered by the expressway. And then on the other side of the plot seems to be surrounded by low-rise building. So I think if you are able to get high floors, then you will be able to have unblocked views. Okay, now what don't I like about this project? I think objectively, this project is far from MRT station. So as mentioned, Marsiling is about 1.3 kilometers away and Woodlands is about 1.6 kilometers away. But of course, you can always take a bus. Another bigger concern for most people is probably the expressway. Remember the part that I told you can see a lot of greeneries? So there's an expressway between this land plot and the greeneries. So if you can only get low floor or medium floor, then you will feel the impact of the expressway. Another watch out about this project is that I predict this project will have high application rate. Competition might be fierce because in general, Woodlands is very popular among Singaporeans. And then the amount of unit in this project is also kind of limited, so only 640, which is not that much. As mentioned earlier, usually if there's a BTO in Woodlands, it is being launched near the Woodlands North, but this one is closer to town. So I think this will be even more popular. Another thing that I don't like about this project is that it has limited on-site facilities. But then again, the HDB next door has more facilities like eating house, etc. So you can just walk over there. Another watch out is that I think this area actually has height restriction because Woodlands Grove BTO next door is only going up to level 16. So I'm assuming that this BTO also will be kind of short. So I think the highest would be level 16 or so. So yeah, that's the watch out. Another watch out about this project is I believe the price will be on the higher side because the lack of subsidy for standard flats. If you want to predict the price for this project, I think we can refer to Woods Grove Edge price. So I'm showing you the price, and Woods Grove Edge was launched back in February 2024. So indeed, it is already quite some time. So I believe the price will be higher for this project, but should not be that far off. So in summary, I think if you like the Woodlands area, this is your chance to get a flat nearer to the heart of the Woodlands town. I consider this is a rare chance because typically HDB tends to release land plot near the Woodlands North area, so the fact that this one is a little bit closer to the crowd is good. The project ticks a lot of boxes. For example, there are plenty of amenities nearby, a lot of school options, it comes with just the standard restrictions, etc. Now, price-wise, it is not the most affordable one, for sure, but it's not the most expensive either. So it's like somewhere in the middle. If you want something that is far more affordable, then you can consider Sembawang. But I think this one is still okay. Especially if you don't mind taking feeder bus, this is the project for you. Last but not least, let's discuss about the two projects in Sembawang. There will be two projects in Sembawang, but they are located literally opposite one another. So I thought it makes sense to discuss them both because they will be sharing a lot of the pros and cons, and in terms of the location analysis, it will also be very similar. So for simplicity, I'll just call the first Sembawang plot as Sembawang North Oaks because this one is closer to the North Oaks Primary School. So this plot is the smaller out of the two, but when I say small, it's not actually small because it will still have 870 units of 2-room flexi, 3-room, 4-room, and 5-room flat. In terms of the on-site facility, this project will have a preschool. Now, if you want a lot more on-site facilities, then you can look at the other project. I will just call this Sembawang Drive, and this is a mega project because it will have more than 1,000 units available of 2-room flexi, 3-room, 4-room, 5-room, and also 3-gen flats. In terms of the on-site facilities, this Sembawang Drive plot will have an eating house, a mini mart, several shops, a preschool, and also resident network center. You might ask, how far is it from the nearest MRT station? Unfortunately, according to Google Map, it is about 1.4 or 1.5 kilometers away from Sembawang MRT station, so you will need to take a feeder bus. However, there are some rumors that there will be new MRT station nearby if the Sembawang shipyard transformation plan actually pushed through. But it's not something that has been confirmed as of today. In terms of the project classification, because these two projects have a 5-room offering, I am guessing that this will be classified as a standard project. And it also makes sense because the previous location launch in Sembawang just in the February 2026 BTO launch was also classified as a standard. So I think this just will be two standard projects. Now let's talk about the location. So this is the map that HDB gave for the first Sembawang plot. As you can see, it is located next to North Oaks Primary School. And then this is the other Sembawang plot that will be launched in June 2026. As you can see, this is the bigger plot and it is located just opposite the previous plot. So if I look at the Google map, I believe that this is the land plot that we're talking about. As you can see, it is very huge. So no wonder it can fit more than 2,000 flats combined, because indeed it is a very huge land plot. If the land plot looks familiar, it is because the previous Sembawang BTO launches are basically located here, and I believe also here. So we have had like quite a lot of Sembawang launches in the past couple of years. Now, what is exciting about this location is the upcoming Sembawang shipyard transformation, assuming that it will happen. So as you can see, there's this giant dock basically, right? So URA actually have a master plan about this. The plan called Sembawang Shipyard Transformation Plan. It will basically transform the 86-hectare site into a mixed-use waterfront lifestyle district. So if indeed this plan push through, I believe that sooner or later it will also bring like a more convenient transport option there. I don't know whether it's only about additional bus routes or maybe additional MRT station. Hopefully that's the case. But the area is quite huge because the development is roughly about 3 times the size of Mo Kio Town Center. So if indeed this push through, this will significantly boost the resale value of the area. So as you can see, your Sembawang plot is very near to the Sembawang shipyard itself, and as you can imagine, if you manage to get a flat here and it is only categorized as standard flat, then you will have just the typical restrictions, which means that you can rent out the whole flat after MOP, and then there's no income ceiling restriction for future resale buyers, etc. So indeed, if the Sembawang shipyard plan actually push through, it will be very beneficial for the BTO owners over here. Now let's talk about the school option. As you can see, obviously North Oaks Primary School is within walking distance, and then you can also see Canberra Secondary School over here. There's another primary school over here. So if we switch back to the HDB map, as you can see, even if we zoom out, there are more school options. So this is a good news for people with young children. If you are wondering where is the nearest MRT station, so it's right over here. So this is the land plot, right? And Sembawang MRT station is over here. So clearly you would need to take a feeder bus because it's kind of a bit far if you just walk. Obviously, near Sembawang MRT station, you will be able to find more amenities such as mall and also hawker center and plenty other shops. If you want something within the walking distance, on top of the on-site facilities that is offered in the Sembawang Drive BTO plot, you also have another eating house here and also several shops and cafe around here as well. So there are some amenities within walking distance, but of course it is kind of limited. That's the reality. For families with young children, there's this Jelutong Harbor Water Playground over here. I've been here before. It's actually quite nice and it's also free. So yeah, it's nice to go on the weekends with your family. Okay, if we look at the land plot itself, so this part is the school, right? And then after that, you have the high-rise residential building. And then this part also is going to be other BTO. Now, this part is industrial complex. So this will be like low-rise building. So if you manage to get high floors, you might be able to get some unblocked view. In terms of the number of stories, we don't know for sure right now, but currently I'm showing you what was launched for Sembawang Voyage, which is like very near to the land plot that is being offered in June. So they go up to level 29. So I'm assuming that for these two Sembawang BTO that will be launched in June, it will be roughly the same height. That would be my guess. That would mean that maybe if you are at the right angle, maybe you can still have some unblocked ocean view, maybe. I'm not so sure. There's a small chance that you might be able to have that, but not so sure. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of these two BTO projects in Sembawang. So I would guess that the strongest point is that these are the budget-friendly option in June 2026. If we look at the lineup, you have Bishan, you have two projects in Mo Kio, you have in Bukit Merah, etc. So clearly, these two Sembawang BTO will be the cheapest among all of the other projects being launched this June. And then in terms of school option, I think that's also good where you have several schools within walking distance. So for families with young children, you don't have to pay for school bus. You can just take your kids directly there to the school. I also appreciate that both of these two projects have wide range of flat types from 2-room flexi up to 5-room, and the Sembawang Drive project even have 3-gen option even though not that many. And then combined, there will be more than 2,000 units being offered by these two plots. So it will give you plenty of resale benchmark. If let's say you want to sell your flat later down the road, or you want to rent them out, that's also possible. I also like that this is only slapped by the standard restrictions. So it's only the typical 5-year MOP. You can rent out the whole flat after MOP, etc. So that's also good. Another thing that I like that this project offers option for singles and seniors who are keen to apply for 2-room flexi. And then because we just had Sembawang being offered in the previous BTO launch in February 2026 as well as July 2025. So I'm guessing that for June, it should be relatively manageable, aka low competition, if you want to secure a flat in either of these two Sembawang plots. So if you just want a roof on top of your head and you have a limited budget and you don't mind taking a feeder bus, this would probably be a good option for those who wants to start their property journey as soon as possible. Now, on the other hand, what are the things that I don't like about this project? I mean, obviously, it is not within walking distance to Sembawang MRT station, so it's a bit far. So you would have to take the feeder bus unless the Sembawang Shipyard Transformation Plan actually push through, and if it brings new MRT station, then that would be a bonus. But for the time being, I think let's just assume that you just need to rely on Sembawang MRT station to access the MRT network in Singapore. Another thing that I don't like is objectively, if you want amenities within walking distance, it's very limited. Most of the time, you would need to take a bus ride to go to malls or to do grocery shopping, etc. So that's the reality. And I think another watch out for this location is that the resale potential is highly dependent on the Sembawang Shipyard Transformation pushing through. So if that master plan doesn't push through, or it's being delayed, or it's being scaled down, etc., then you would not see the jump in terms of resale and also rental value of your flat here. And then for those of you who opted to book a flat in the bigger Sembawang plot, which for the time being I'll call it Sembawang Drive BTO, because it has an eating house downstairs and several shops as well as a mini mart. For certain blocks, if you live in low floors, you might have a noise issue and also pest problems because of these on-site facilities. So that's the watch out. Another watch out, probably because Sembawang itself has a lot of BTO being developed, as well as the potential Sembawang Shipyard Transformation Plan that would translate into construction noise and also dust. But I think that's a short-term problem, because if indeed those development has been completed, then you would have a much nicer place to live in the area. So in summary, I think these two projects are the type of project that you just apply if you really like the area and you just want to secure a house as soon as possible. Considering the timid response to Sembawang BTO project back in February 2026, most likely these two projects will have a low competition rate, and I would even predict that quite a portion will ended up in the SBF process couple of years from now. Personally, I'm struggling to understand what is the logic behind releasing so many Sembawang units back to back, because quite a lot of Sembawang units from February 2026 will end up in the SBF process, and then in June 2026 there are even more Sembawang units. I couldn't understand the logic. Maybe to give HDB the benefit of a doubt, right? Maybe the Sembawang Shipyard Transformation will actually push through in near future. Then if you develop these BTOs back to back, then it will shorten the inconvenient period where the residents in the area will be bothered by noise and dust, etc. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know. But personally, I am a big believer of rotation. So for example, if you already launched Sembawang in February 2026, then, it would be better to introduce other towns in the next BTO launch so that people have some variety to choose from. I mean, that's just my opinion. To support my work, you can give a one-time tip by pressing the thanks button, pick the amount that you want, and click buy and send. Or you can also press the join button for exclusive contents and monthly membership. Your support means a lot to keep us independent. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye!